Welcome to the Jazz Notes podcast. I'm Ben Anderson.
I'm Chandler Holt.
It is October 1st, which means it's NBA season. College football season is over. You don't have to pay attention to college football at all anymore. The NFL is done. It is NBA season, and the Utah Jazz are in action on Friday. We had Media Day yesterday. We'll get to your mailbag coming up, as always, in the second half of the show. A lot of questions today, understandably. But find us on Twitter at Ben's Hoops. You can find Chandler at Holt Sports. You can find us at KSLSports.com. All the normal things that I tell you every week. If this is your first time listening, thank you. Where have you been? All right. It's here. The Jazz season is here. I'm excited for it. That is not going to make the Jazz documentary. We said that last time, and it turned into the Take Note documentary that they made. So, no, this is cool. I'm excited for the season to be here. I'm more excited for this year than I was last year. I don't know why. I mean, I love my job. I'm not excited because I'm a fan. I am a huge fan of the NBA. I'm really a basketball dork, so I'm a fan that basketball is back. I'm excited to cover this team. I think this team's actually pretty interesting and actually more interesting than last year's was.
I can see that, honestly. You know, there's a lot of young players on the roster now. There was a lot of young players last year, but even more this year seems to be the focus for the team this year. And, I mean, you always put a lot of time into college basketball when the NBA draft rolls around, and you say that some of your favorite part is youth development, so there's going to be a lot of that for the Jazz this year.
Yeah, and that's a good place to start. We'll get to some news and notes that have come out over the last day or two, a couple of things that are probably worth talking about, but we can start with what the theme was Friday. They didn't hide it, and then yesterday they continued at Media Day. Friday, of course, was when Danny Ainge, Justin Zanuck, and Ryan Smith spoke, and then yesterday was the players and Will Hardy. This team is going full young.
Yep.
They are not even going to pretend that Svi Mikhailiuk is starting. They are, Patty Mills is not starting. Like, they're not going to put veterans out there the way you saw Kelly Olynyk. No, credit Kelly Olynyk. He was way better than Svi Mikhailiuk and Patty Mills at this point in his career. The Jazz aren't talking about that. They're not mentioning it. They are not pretending that those guys are going to be on the forefront. This is going to be a youth movement for the Jazz. I asked Will Hardy point blank, "Are you prepared to start rookies?" He said, "I'm strongly ready to do it. Like I'm over the top ready to start rookies. Like no question about it. You're going to see at least one rookie start."
Yep.
I don't know if there's room for two. Like Kyle Filipowski just goes crazy and wins the starting center job. I don't see that happening. I guess conceivably he could start at the 4, but he's not going to.
Yeah.
I think you're going to see either Taylor Hendricks or Cody Williams be in the starting lineup. We've talked about that a lot, like who you play next to Lauri Markkanen. We'll see what happens at the center position. We'll see what the backcourt looks like. But I'm going to tell you, I think we're going to see Cody. I think we're going to see Taylor. I think we're going to see Bryce. I think we're going to see Keontae. I think we're going to see Walker. And then, look, the backup point guard spot probably has to be Isaiah Collier.
Yeah.
I kind of doubted it. They didn't bring anybody in.
Mm-mm.
There's nobody else to play. He has to play just because the backcourt has good players in Jordan Clarkson and Colin Sexton and Keontae George. That's it. And you have to play at least 4 guards, which means I think Isaiah has to play.
And something that I thought added to that was during Patty Mills's podium appearance, he said nothing about bringing anything to this team really on the court.
He did not.
Yeah, everything he said was about being a great mentor and a vet in the locker room. And I think that, honestly, that is what the Jazz need. But I think you're right. I think that points to Collier getting more playing time than maybe a lot of people thought.
Yeah, certainly more than I had expected. We will see what happens with Kyle Filipowski as well. Again, he's good. Jordan Clarkson was effusive in his praise of Kyle Filipowski to the point where I was like, is he actually talking about Isaiah Collier? Because what he was saying, he called him the number 1 recruit in the country, which he wasn't, but he was number 4.
Yeah.
And he said, man, his shooting form looks perfect. I was like, okay, so no, he's not talking about Isaiah Collier. And that's not a knock on Isaiah. That's the knock on Isaiah.
Yeah.
He's like, his shooting form is perfect, but he's like, he grabbed the ball on the perimeter and made a read and put the ball on the floor and broke down the defense and then made a pass. And then Flip later kind of clarified. He's like, yeah, I played with Jordan. We had a practice day together, and I played well. Yeah. So he was talking about Kyle Filipowski. But honestly, when I was rereading the quote, I had to listening to it. I listened to it twice. I was like, is he accidentally talking about Isaiah Collier and he thinks his nickname is Flip? It's like, no, because he was actually asked, how are Cody, Isaiah, and Kyle looking? And then Jordan Clarkson said Flip. So he totally knew who he was talking about, but had a ton of praise for him. What I've heard behind the scenes is the Jazz are pretty excited about Isaiah Collier and Cody Williams as well. Cody apparently is just very good.
Yeah.
He's playing well defensively. He's a good in open gym. Sounds like he still needs to do the thing at Colorado he needed to do, which was be the guy, be the man. Don't defer all the time. But if he needs to defer to Lowry or Colin or whoever for a while, that's fine. But I think they're pretty geeked about him. I think they're pretty geeked about this class, and it's ahead of where last year's rookie class was at this point, which makes sense. Bryce Sensabaugh and Taylor Hendricks were hurt, but heard good things about Bryce and Taylor too. Like, I think the Jazz are just fully going young, and you're going to see a lot of them early on.
I have a list of notes here about some of my favorite quotes, et cetera, from Media Day, and this goes into it. Clarkson, when asked about the young guys, like literally, you're right. The first thing he says is he comes out and says, "Man, Flip is super talented." Like he just goes straight to that, and I think that's interesting because he was the last of the 3 rookies selected, but the first one that he talks about. So I think that he has to be impressing in some way. Granted, I don't know how much time he gets early on in the season, especially with Collier fitting a positional need and Cody Williams being a top 10 pick.
And it's a deep position. The Jazz actually are pretty deep in the front court. You have John Collins, who started most of the games last year. You have Walker Kessler. You have Lowry Markkanen. You have Drew Eubanks. You have Taylor Hendricks, who I think is more of a 4 or 5 at this point. You have a lot of bodies up there that makes it hard for a rookie to step in and play right away. I'm not eliminating it, but it's probably the deepest position the Jazz actually have.
Yeah. Some other things that I thought was interesting. First of all, this is a question that we'll address later in the mailbag, but literally every single veteran got a question about what do you think about all the young guys? What do you think about the youth movement? And of course, like they're professionals. Most of them gave pretty respectful answers. Colin Sexton, though, said he thinks the team can be surprising. Vets, and this was his quote, vets aren't thinking of the future, they're thinking of now. Hopefully, in some degree, thinking of now is also thinking of developing the team and getting to a point where they can be competitive in the future. But I thought that was interesting. And then John Collins, when asked about the young guys, said that they're ultra competitive and they have like a fire in their eye. And I like that quote from him.
And they need to be. And look, even Jordan said at one point yesterday that I thought was pretty interesting. He said, I've got to give back to the game. The game has given me a lot, and I've got to give back to the game. And basically what he meant is I've got to let these young guys have an opportunity and train them up and give that back to them as well, because it can't be just about me.
Yeah.
It can't be just about what I'm doing. By the way, Lowry Markkanen did say when asked about the young guys, because, again, he was asked, he said, we got to see what we have. Like, he is on board with this. He knows this is going to be a bad season from wins and losses standpoint, but they've got to figure out what they have. And that is kind of, I guess, the message that is permeating throughout the entire organization is, yes, you can talk about Cooper Flagg and all these things. They don't know what they have yet in these 6 guys. So as much as this plan this season to lose 55 games or whatever you want to call it, it's not tanking. It doesn't hurt. It's a good year to do it.
Yeah.
They need to know who Taylor is, who Bryce is, who Keontae is, and then who Cody, Isaiah, and Kyle Filipowski are as well. That's as much a part of it as the idea of maybe there's gold at the end of the rainbow. They need to see what the rainbow's made up of too, and that's what this season's going to be about.
I'm trying to avoid stepping on the toes of anyone asking a question in the mailbag later, but do you have a favorite answer, favorite quote, favorite moment from Media Day off the top of your head?
You know what? It was fun. I will admit, Jake and I, we were broadcasting down inside the practice facility. So I stepped away for 2 hours in the middle of Media Day when they're all up on the podium. And we got to sit and talk to Will Hardy for probably 15 minutes, which might be the longest I've ever talked to him, just kind of one-on-one.
Yeah.
Like, that's actually pretty unique. You don't get to just sit and talk to a coach like that. And one-on-one, Jake and I talking to Will. And then we did the same thing with Justin Zanuck, and I thought it was really fascinating. So I would go back and listen to those. You might have heard a lot of the Media Day content. You might have been watching on YouTube or SEG+. KSLSports.com. We got to sit and talk to Will just about, like, you're going into your 3rd year. Like, it's a different job. Year 1 was brand new. Year 2, you're kind of reacting to what you learned in year 1, thinking, well, year 1's how it's going to be every year, and it's not. And then you panic. What happens in year 3 when you kind of have a sense of the pendulum swinging to both extremes? So I thought those were both really good interviews. I would recommend going back and listening to them the second this podcast is over, and not a second sooner. Yeah, don't leave this.
For me, going back to the players, I had both of my favorite quotes from Media Day came from Jordan Clarkson. His first one, he was asked about Lowry Markkanen, just like what he expects from him this year.
Yeah.
And he said, that
blank.
Yeah, that blank was in the military.
Yeah, which is a great answer.
Yes.
And very accurate. I was talking about this last night. Yeah, you got to realize, that part of it, the military part of it, he's also, like, come to a foreign country and become a star.
Yes.
Like, there's this stupid myth about European players being soft. Like, do you know how hard that is to leave your home country, be somewhere foreign, and become a guy, like a star, not just like, oh, he's a complimentary piece, he's a fun player. No, he's a star. He's a face of a franchise, and he carries that. I thought that was that takes a tough person to do it. So yes, I agree with Jordan. That blank is tough.
And also the other one from Jordan Clarkson. And sorry to JC in advance because he said he wanted to keep this in the media day room, but he said that he was fangirling over having Patty Mills in the locker room.
Yeah.
And I thought that was awesome. Just like seems like sort of a random player, but also like Patty Mills was a huge contributor to a Spurs dynasty. So I see it at the same time.
There was talk. I know Justin Zanuck mentioned it on Friday, but like. Patty Mills was almost out of the NBA.
Yep.
Kind of came in, was okay, had been good at St. Mary's, and in one offseason, like totally changed his body, became the weird heart and soul of that Spurs team that did have Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili, and Tony Parker, 3 Hall of Famers, and kind of was the extrovert. And they've said that word a lot, is that Patty Mills is an extrovert, and you could tell he gave like 4-minute answers to every question yesterday on like weird little questions like, hey, what have you seen from Keontae? And he goes into this philosophical deep dive on what it's like to be a young player in the NBA. It's like, oh yeah, you are an extrovert, and the Jazz do need that.
Yes.
They need somebody to talk, and that's not what they didn't have it at any point last year. And as much as like Jordan's like a talker, he's not that type of guy.
Yeah.
So I think Patty Mills will really be a positive there.
Anything else from Media Day?
No, let's get to some of the news and notes that came out that I think are advantageous for fans. First of all, quickly, this only applies if you're active or retired military and military family. Saturday, the Jazz are going to be hosting an open scrimmage from noon until 1. Not like a huge event, but if you're at Hill Air Force Base, they're doing it at Warrior Center, you do have to have coverage, or you do have to have clearance to get on the base. So like, you don't try and fake it to get on if you're a fan. They are not going to let you in. In fact, don't mess with the Air Force. I've never done it, but I'm still alive, so I think it's good advice. Don't mess with it. But the Jazz do play Friday. Like, you can watch them Friday.
Yeah.
Don't worry about Saturday. And then I love the pricing on the food inside the arena. And by the way, this is for hockey and the Jazz. This isn't just like, oh, well, the Jazz are going to be bad, so we're going to give you cheap food. It's $2 for water bottles. It's $3 for nachos, $3 for popcorn, $3 for hot dogs, and $3 for ice cream.
Yes.
So,
awesome.
Fast now and put on a bunch of weight during the season because it's very affordable. I'm way into this idea. My understanding is Ryan's been wanting to do this for a long time.
Yes.
And it became feasible this year. And I don't mean feasible because the team's going to be bad. I think they've really wanted to do this for a while. You've seen Arthur Blank do this with the Atlanta Falcons. The Mariners do this. I know you've probably gone and had some of their crickets or whatever the weird food is that they sell up there. But they have like some reasonably priced food.
Yes.
It is a growing fad around professional sports, and it should be. Tickets are expensive. Tickets are hard to get. You should be able to eat once you're there.
Yep, 100%. And one more thing, there's a few other additions to the Delta Center with the Utah Hockey Club having his inaugural season. The Delta Center team store expansion, of course. Right? There's going to be a lot of hockey stuff there now. They already had the Utah Jazz app, so you could order food and drinks from your phone. But from what it sounds like, they're sort of diving deeper into that, maybe making it a little bit easier. And then team store jerseys, and let's talk about this. There's the new Utah Jazz jerseys that got announced a couple months ago.
Yep.
The purple Jazz City jersey, that's the purple one with the blue highlight, that is going to be available in November of 2024, next month. And then the black statement jersey is going to be available in January, so just after the new year. And then the Association White and the Icon Purple, the two other new jerseys, are expected to be available, let's word it like that, in August 2025.
I think we kind of knew it a little bit on the jerseys. We didn't have the exact month.
Yes.
I had fall originally for the purple jersey and early 2025 for the black jerseys. So just a little bit more clarity. Unfortunately, not October.
Yeah.
But yeah, good news. And some new food options as well inside the arena. Some local options as well. So cool that they're doing that.
All right, want to take a break?
Yeah, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we will get to your mailbag questions. Stick around. More Jazz Notes coming up next. Welcome back to the Jazz Notes podcast. Again, man, October 1st. We are 4 days away.
Yeah.
Friday.
Like we have preseason and like practices starting now, but we have regular season at the end of the month.
No, we're not far away from this all moving. The Jazz actually have the first American, or I guess preseason game on American soil. Technically Friday morning, Boston and Denver play in Abu Dhabi.
Okay.
So it's at like 10 a.m., which is fine.
Yeah.
I'll watch it during my show. But I'm going to do a really bad show Friday. But the Jazz kick off or tip off at 7. I think there's another game at 8:30. So the Jazz really are kind of the first Friday night turn on the NBA and you're going to be able to watch the Jazz come
That's awesome.
up. So really cool. Yeah. Against the New Zealand Breakers. I don't know if I mentioned that earlier today. All right, let's get to the mailbag. As always, I send out a prompt on Tuesdays on Twitter at Ben's Hoops, asking you for your mailbag questions. You can also DM me throughout the week. I've been better about checking my DMs, so I appreciate everyone who does that. And we answer them here on the podcast and in an ensuing article. All right, where are we starting?
Let's start with the DMs. It's sort of becoming a weekly thing now to start with DM questions, so let's do it. First up from J-Bo, Oscar Tshiebwe was great at Media Day. Do you see a path for him to get actual minutes in the NBA in the future? Seems like his one NBA skill, rebounding, is legit. Maybe Eubanks can teach him and Kessler how to actually screen, and he has 2 NBA-level skills, question mark?
I would say rebounding is his fastball, stealing a term from Will Hardy. I think it's important to remember, like, Kentucky, and look, I don't think Coach Calipari is a good coach at all. They changed everything they did to just give him the ball in the post every time. Yep. So it's not like he's not Dennis Rodman offensively. He has, like, actually kind of reasonable touch. He can do a few things that are better than your traditional, I only rebound and I can't do anything else, a la Andre Drummond. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, he actually has, like, he shot 73% from the free throw line. Like, there's actually some touch there. He's really smart, like really, really smart. We talked to him yesterday, and he broke down how he rebounds as well as he did. And that was, if you want to know what my favorite quote was, it wasn't just that, like, I look where they shot it from and I calculate I'm going to be on the opposite side of the basket. He said, no, I look at their wrist when they release the ball, and I can tell by the wrist if the ball is going to be long or if it's going to be short. And I position myself then at the release of the shot, not whether, if you shoot from the far corner, I just go on the other side of the basket. He's like, no, if their shot's long, 75% of the time it's going to come here, and I can tell by his wrist and his release, that's where I position myself. And then I know if I'm here, even if it goes one of the other 25% directions, the other, the fluky way the ball bounces, I'm the only person in this position who can get to that spot from where I am. Like, It wasn't just, I try harder.
Yeah.
It was like he really has thought about this. He's like really smart.
Yeah.
So weigh in on Oscar Tshiebwe. Certainly my favorite player on the team this year. But yeah, at Kentucky, good team. This isn't the best Kentucky teams in history, but his last 2 years he averaged over 17 points a game. So again, he's not some rebounding dynamo who averages 4 points a game. Like, they did everything to give him the ball, and it was pretty worthwhile. So cool player, easy to root for. I don't know if there's a chance for him to get minutes on top of it. And I'm sure he's impossible to keep off the floor because coaches love guys who rebound and play hard and then are really nice. But again, the Jazz are just deep and they're more invested in other players. Now, could Oscar Tshiebwe be a player in the future? Absolutely, Oscar Tshiebwe could be a player for the Jazz in the future. And maybe the second half of the season he gets a lot of minutes. I don't expect to see it to start the year.
Gotcha.
But good question, and I'm glad you brought him up because we didn't mention him, and he deserves it. He is phenomenal. I hope the Jazz just spam Oscar Tshiebwe content all year because he's super sweet.
Next question from Aggie Fan Dan. Could Utah support a WNBA team better now than they could 2 or more days ago? And how would an expansion franchise in that league impact the Jazz?
No, worse, because they added a hockey team.
Yeah, yes.
That's honestly, I wish if they didn't have a hockey team, I would have said, bring a WNBA team in. Hockey is going to suck up a lot of the free time that people have. And because it's also at the Delta Center now, honestly, and I know they play a different schedule. They play in the summer in the WNBA. It would just be really hard to play all three in one arena because there is some crossover.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of crossover in the league. So, to the point where the WNBA is in their playoffs right now and the Jazz are starting their preseason.
Yes.
Like, it just would be a little bit difficult to do. However, I'm a true believer that Caitlin Clark is revolutionizing the WNBA. She's going to she's going to take it to a level we've not seen before. And very quickly, the level of women's basketball is going to climb.
Yes.
Because of her. Because you have a bunch of girls. And look, this is the same thing that happened with Tiger Woods in golf. Like, everyone's like, oh man, I got to be long off the tee now. It's just when a guy starts playing a certain way or a woman starts playing a certain way, the young people start playing that way and they match it quickly.
Yes.
Really quickly. It's not that hard to evolve. Like, we think like, this has got to be the 4-year-old who starts playing like Caitlin Clark. Like, no, there's a 10th grader who says, I like the way she shoots threes. I'm going to shoot threes now. And so she'll be in the WNBA in 6 years?
Yeah,
which is still a ways out. But there's a high school senior who's good, who can already do some of it, who's going to lean into it this year, play a few years of college basketball, and then make the jump to the WNBA. And there's going to be 4 Caitlin Clarks, and then there's going to be 12 Caitlin Clarks, and there's going to be 150 Caitlin Clarks. And 150 is a stretch, but like she's going to raise the bar so high so quickly. And it's going to sound like a knock on the WNBA. It's not. You just need revolutionary players to push the game forward. You need those true one-of-a-kind players like Larry and Magic or like Michael that elevate the game beyond the rest of the group, and that's what Caitlin is.
Yep.
And everyone catches up really quickly. And the WNBA hasn't had one in a while.
A good way to really get an idea of the timeline. Think about Steph Curry in the NBA and the three-point revolution.
Right.
He what was his first All-Star year, like 2013, 2014?
Right.
By 2018, the entire league was shooting double the amount of threes they were a decade ago.
Yeah, right. It's that quick.
Yes.
And that's what's going to happen. So you're going to see a lot of Caitlin Clark clones coming up. So the WNBA is going to take off. I won't be surprised if that conversation is had at some point, but it's a ways out because hockey is going to suck up all the air. And rightfully so. I've been watching the games. I love it. It's really fun. I went to their preseason game. It ruled. I highly recommend going.
All right. Let's move into the questions on Twitter now. First up from Jazz Nation. So much chatter about young player and youth movement during media day. Did you catch vibe from any of the vet players that they were kind of annoyed by all the questions and talk about the young players?
No. In fact, I will say this more this year than last year, where I know there was like some narrative that Jordan Clarkson was freezing out the rookies and wouldn't pass to them. And like there were times when Kelly seems like he would look at Keontae and then not pass. I would also say like Keontae was a 30% three-point shooter for a lot of the year. I get why they weren't passing to him on catch and shoot threes. But I kind of get the impression everyone's on the same page, that everyone recognizes what's going on. They know this is not a team that's going to win 30 games. And they kind of just recognize, like, hey, that's what we are, and it's fine. We're all getting paid a lot of money. We all like where we are. We like the state of Utah. We can play well and get more contracts in the future, and that's the truth of it. Like John Collins, this could be a contract year for him if he opted out, but he can opt in to his deal and make another $25 million next year. Like he should embrace that, and I think that's how the Jazz are going to treat a lot of these veterans. It's like, hey, man, do you like getting paid millions of dollars to be an NBA player? We're going with the young guys. And that doesn't mean Jordan's not going to play and John Collins isn't going to play and Colin Sexton's not going to play. Larry Markkinen's not going to play. Those guys are all going to get 30 minutes a night, 26 plus at least, like a normal NBA rotation. There's just not the sixth and seventh guy to do that like they had last year with Kelly or Simone Fontecchio. You're just going to have to play the young guys a lot more. So I don't think the young guys actually eat up playing time. They do eat up the opportunity to win. But no, I thought everyone was really on the same page more than in years past.
Next question from Blake. Where do you think the Jazz will finish in the Western Conference standings? 3 weeks ago, we did How do the Jazz stack up against the rest of the West podcast. Go listen to that if you are really curious about this question. We break down the entire Western Conference, give our predictions 1 through 15. Bottom 3 in the West, and after Media Day, I think it has to be 15th or 14th.
I am more inclined after what I've learned yesterday and Friday to say 15th than I was beforehand. Now, that doesn't mean I'm betting 15th. Like, there's just the fluky thing of Portland's better at tanking than you are, or really stinks, or whatever. So I would say 14th, but I think there's a better pathway to 15th than I thought as of last Thursday.
Yeah.
So, 14th or 15th, with slightly higher odds that they're 15th now than I had previously expected, and still bottom 5 or 6 in the NBA.
Next question from Tyler Wallach. How great is Patty Mills? I'm really excited to see what he can do with the young guys. We've been needing that guy that can fill in the mentor/leader gap, and he's perfect, while Laurie continues to develop into our foundational long-term leader.
I thought he said, how gray is Patty Mills? I was like, well, he's old.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not 40 yet, though. He's not LeBron. He's old. He's not that old. No, again, like I said, I think this is a pretty fun team. I'm kind of excited to see what this group looks like once it's all gelling. And gelling just means like Keontae has a good night and then is terrible the next night, and Taylor has a good night and then is terrible the next night. I think you're going to see a lot of that. But yeah, I think this is fun to see how these young guys play. I don't know if you're going to see Patty Mills on the floor with these guys.
Yeah.
So if that's what you're looking for, I don't think you're going to see that. It's going to be a lot behind the scenes, and 3, 4, 5, 6 years down the road, none of these guys might even be on the Jazz. Some of them will. But like the same way I remember I talked to Mike Conley about how good Damon Stoudemire was for him, which like as a basketball dork was just a really cool conversation for me, because Damon Stoudemire, had this weird reputation of like not a bad guy, but like kind of an empty calories scorer early in his career. And then Mike was like, no, he's the best pro I've ever been next to. He taught me everything about how to be a professional. And now I think if you were to, survey the NBA, everyone would say like Mike Conley's the best pro.
Yeah.
Like he's the best guy, the best pros pro, the best locker room guy, the best teammate in the NBA. And he's like, yeah, I learned it all from Damon Stoudemire. So in that sense, you might have a Keontae George or a Bryce Sensabaugh or an Isaiah Collier 6 years from now being like, yeah, Patty Mills changed my life.
Yeah.
Because he taught me how to come to work, how to be in shape, how to take it seriously, how to not get too low, how to not get too high, how to be at work the next morning after a late night, like all of those things. So I think that's very cool. I don't expect to see Patty Mills on the floor much at all.
Next question from Alex. This is super simplistic, but Hendricks is a 4/5, Lowry is a 3/4, John Collins is a 4/5, Keontae is a 1/2, and Cody Williams is a 2/3. Is this flexibility typical around the league, or is this just Ainge and Zanuck having fun?
I think it's pretty typical.
I think so too.
I think that's where a lot of the NBA is going. Like, here, I'll just give me a random team.
Charlotte
I'll pull
Hornets.
up their roster. All right, so I'll pull up the Charlotte Hornets roster right now, and I think you can see this, how regularly this really does kind of apply. And we can go with just their rookie who they drafted, Tijon Salon, who was their lottery pick out of nowhere. And I don't know if he's going to play much this year. He should because they're bad. But he's like, yeah, he's a 3-4, potentially small ball 5.
Yep.
Harry Giles is kind of a 4 or 5. Man, I don't recognize half the names on this team. Seth Curry, he's a 1-2.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
LaMelo Ball 1-2.
Yeah.
Brandon Miller 2-3.
Miles Bridges 3-4.
Yep.
Like all these guys have to play multiple positions unless you are Rudy Gobert, unless you're Mitchell Robinson. Like you gotta play 2 positions.
Yes.
Walker Kessler only has to play 1. He's a rim running center. He plays 1. But yeah, basically everybody in the NBA has to play at least 2. Unless you're really small and you're exclusively a point guard. And even then, you better be able to share the floor with other guys.
Yeah. I want to build off of Alex's question for a second. He calls Hendricks a 4/5, which I think is like the common thing for Hendricks.
Except for Hendricks thinks he's a 3-4.
I was going to say, like, I could even see him getting to a 3-4, especially next to Lowry, right? But I also think that eventually, say, when the Jazz are competitive, they could have a Warriors death lineup-esque sort of lineup with him at the 5. Lowry at the 4, and then 2 guards and whoever that 3 would be. What do you think about that? Do you think that Hendricks is, just based on his play style, doomed or destined to be a 4/5?
Yeah, I don't want him dribbling.
Yeah.
I watched the Summer League. I don't want him dribbling. You know where he's really good? Attack a closeout with one dribble. And Euro step and dunk. And hit a wide open 3. Like, his game is great. I love his game. If you were to ask me, like, who of the players on last year's rookie class has the highest potential, I still think it's Taylor.
Yeah.
He's 6'9". He's a 37% three-point shooter. He's a really good shot blocker. His game is simple. Now, Keontae George, if it all comes together, does it make more sense? I get it. He could be a star. Even Bryce's ability to, like, create shots and score makes a lot of sense. 6'9" guys who can shoot threes and block shots are really valuable in the NBA. If Taylor figures it all out, and again, he added 21 pounds of weight, we'll see. He might run it all off in training camp.
True.
You can lose weight really quickly when you're starting to play like a pro again. His game really translates well to the modern NBA and could continue to get better and better. But he can still be really good at the 4. He doesn't need to be a 3 necessarily. Yeah. And cool if he could have been, but he's not Brandon Miller.
True.
You can see how good Brandon Miller is, the ball in his hands. I think that's stuff, honestly, you have to do when you're like 12 and do it your whole life. I think it's hard to be a center your whole life because your coach was just like, well, you're the tall guy on the team and maybe you can shoot some threes, to then learn how to play guard or play on the wing. So I don't expect Taylor Hendricks to get there, but I know he wants to.
Yeah.
So
if Tayll Hendricks and Cody Williams can both put on and keep weight, I think that's like the biggest thing that they could be missing in their game, and like a lot of the other stuff will just come.
Yep.
Next up from James McKinney, how would you best describe Danny Ainge's plan to win a championship from what we've seen so far?
Have a couple of these 6 players that are on the roster now turn into real guys.
Yep.
Get lucky in the draft next year and get one of these top 4 or 5 picks and have them turn into a guy. And then you have Larry Markkinen and 3 guys. And look, do I even want to say this? There's still like a chance the Jazz just trade Lowry next summer.
Yeah.
I don't think so. That's not how they talk about him at all. I promise you, behind the scenes for a year and a half and on the mic, they don't talk about trading Lowry. I've never had anyone say it's 50-50. I've never once. I have been told by people who know the whole plan is to re-sign Lowry. I've been saying that on this podcast for 9 months now.
Yes.
Because I remember the conversation I had because I asked, and they said, yeah, sign Lowry. Like, it wasn't ever a question for the Jazz. It didn't matter how much the cost was going to be. That was the plan, to sign Lowry. And still, next year, if someone wants to give you the number 5 overall pick and you have the number 3 overall pick and you can get the 3rd pick and the 5th pick in next year's draft and you get VJ Edgecombe and Nolan Traore and you've got all these young players too and you say, yeah, we're just going full young. Full young, Lowry's 28. We want to give him on a winning spot. We're going to go really bad again and get Cam Boozer or whatever. Debonsta, you can do it.
Yeah.
You know, so I don't think that's the plan. But again, like if that's what strikes and some team is like, man, Memphis randomly had another bad year, or Oklahoma City randomly had a bad year and ended up with the 5th pick, and they just don't have room to develop a 5th pick, but Lowry will make them a championship contender, they'll trade it for you. Like, okay, so you trade him.
Yeah.
So I still think the plan is not that far off from what we've been talking about for a long time. Could include Lowry. It might not. Probably does at this point. I would say it seems more likely that it does, but yeah, draft good players and then do sort of what the Knicks have done. I mean, we haven't talked at all about what the Knicks did. It's pretty interesting. Knicks have all these guys. They don't have like an A1 guy. I really like Jalen Brunson, but he's closer to Donovan Mitchell than he is Jason Tatum.
Yeah, 100%.
So how good are they? They're trying to win with a collection of guys who are the 15th to 35th best player in the NBA. And that's Cat, that's Jalen Brunson, that's Mikal Bridges, that's OG Anunoby. OG's probably not top 35, but he's really good.
Yeah.
And that's their plan. I
think it could work, too.
And it might work. Yeah, right. You get healthy and the offense clicks and you've got enough defensively. When Mitchell Robinson comes back, you outlast, a Boston team that gets beat up at the end of the year. Maybe you do win. So I think that's the pathway forward. It might not necessarily just be about how do you get a top 3 player in the world.
Yeah.
It's hard to do.
Speaking of potential top 3 players in the world, Alex asks, if the Jazz can get Cooper Flagg, which of the young guys loses out the most?
All of them.
Yeah, 100%.
We talked to Michael Potter yesterday. Did you hear this conversation on the podium? And he was asked, like, okay, you were on the USA Select team. You saw Cooper Flagg. Like, how good is he? He's like, he's 100% the real deal. Like, it's as real as is talked about. In fact, he's better. His body just needs to get there. Yeah. And he's 17, 18. His body's got to get there.
And I agree that it is all of them. Loses out the most, probably Bryce Sensabaugh. Like, he would probably completely fall out of the lineup, even though that's not even a complete position match. But then also, like, Taylor Hendricks.
It could just be Taylor.
Yeah, because Cooper Flagg is supposed to be this elite defensive player and just needs to sort of make some strides offensively. And then that is basically what Taylor Hendricks is as well.
Or it could be Cody.
Yeah, true.
Like, let's say Cody starts the year at the starting small forward. Cooper Flagg will start next year if the Jazz land him.
Yeah, 100%.
He will start. And Lowry's starting, as long as Lowry's still on the team. So, yeah, then it's Cody who loses out.
Yeah.
But then maybe Cody slips to the 2, and then it is Bryce or whatever. So it could be all of them. He would be a bomb dropped in the middle of the roster.
Yes, 100%.
Sounds like he's that good.
But I would say the answer is we don't even really know yet. It's whoever is starting at 3.
And you know what? It might make everyone better.
True.
You know what's really good for Jalen Williams? Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and vice versa.
Yes.
Jalen Williams is very good for Shai. Shai's very good for Jalen. The good players help other players. That's what the best players in the world do. So in that sense, who does it hurt the most? Might actually help everybody. Just because he allows, and the Jazz talked about this a lot, and this was an issue for the Jazz in the second half of the season where I think some people have soured on Keontae George, was like, well, after Jordan Clarkson gets hurt, and after, I should start with Lowry gets hurt with his shoulder, Keontae George is the top of a rotation in the NBA. He's at 19 years old.
Yeah.
Like, he wasn't at the top of the rotation, or he wasn't at the top of the scouting report at Baylor. So he's doing that in the NBA starting in, February, March. That was really hard for him, and it chewed him up. And they beat him up at the end of the season because everyone knew he was the Jazz's best option, he and Colin Sexton, and they just said, fine, we'll kill you, and they did. If you get a guy who's a top 3 player in your scouting report, Lowry's there already. Say you add Cooper Flagg, he becomes number 2, Collins number 3. Everyone slides down a spot.
Yep.
That's really good for everybody, that everyone has an easier job because, okay, now the 4th best defensive player is defending me, and that's good for Keontae. So while, yes, it may hurt development opportunities or financial opportunities, it actually makes everyone better on the floor.
That's why the Boston Celtics were head and shoulders above everyone in the NBA last year, is because they had 5 all-star caliber players in their starting lineup.
Yeah. Drew Holiday got to a point where it's actually kind of tough for him because he was the number 2 player on the scouting report in Milwaukee.
Yeah.
It was Giannis, and then because Chris Middleton was always hurt, it was Drew, and Drew wasn't that good. Drew was 5th, and all of a sudden you're like, how did anyone ever trade Drew? I was like, well, he's the 5th best player on the team.
Yeah,
he was asked to be 2nd somewhere else because Brook Lopez isn't that good anymore. So, yeah, that's the game.
Last question from Jazz Time Jones. What was the biggest surprise yesterday at Media Day?
There's a lot of hype around Bryce Sensabaugh. Like a lot.
Yeah.
And I was a little bit higher on him at Summer League than I think some people were. He had a really bad turnover game. He kind of was like, oh, there were some moments watching Bryce. He also shot 40% from three. They really think Bryce can shoot.
Okay.
Like, they really think Bryce can shoot. And that's how you get on the floor in the NBA.
Yep.
Just be a guard who hits shots. That's the easiest way to make money and stick in the NBA. It sounds like he's shooting well, despite that finger injury. And they were happy that he trimmed down. I think there were some concerns that, like, maybe he wasn't serious about it because he's always kind of been a bigger body guy. He has had a lot of knee injuries, and that's offset him. We talked to a really interesting thing that Justin Zanuck said yesterday in our interview with him was that when they got Bryce in, they judge balance a lot. So they've got all these crazy tests to figure out, like, are you using one leg more than the other, et cetera. Bryce was using one leg 30% more than the other. Not just like, oh, you jump off your left leg because you're right-handed. No, like when he jumped off of 2 feet, all the power was coming from one leg. Well, you're going to get hurt.
Yeah.
And he was getting hurt. And so they've worked with him a lot to correct that, and they said it's within 1% now of where his pressure is coming from or where that burst is coming from. So they've really worked to give him some better balance. Now, does this translate? I don't know.
Yeah.
But the idea is to get him healthier, but he's lost weight, he's stronger, he's worked on the things they've asked him to work on, he's making shots apparently in open practice. Like, all the things you wanted him to see that he takes it seriously, he's taking it seriously.
I think that the Jazz have one of the hardest rotations to predict in the NBA just in terms of like minutes. How many minutes do you think Bryce would play though?
14?
Just like a guess. 14? Okay.
Like, let's say Keontae's going to for sure get 25.
Yeah.
Jordan's going to for sure get 23, 25.
Yep.
Colin's getting 25 to 30.
Yes.
So that leaves, I'm not trying to do all this math on the air, but like that probably leaves 15 minutes for Isaiah.
Yeah.
And then Bryce probably has to play a little bit of the 2-3, so it'll be like Cody and Bryce and maybe a little bit of Taylor mixed in there or whatever. So it's like probably 12, 13, 15. Yeah, he's probably Will Hardy plays 10 guys. He's always played 10 guys.
Yep.
10th guy probably plays 12 minutes. So is that Isaiah Collier or is that Bryce Sensabaugh? I think that's probably the conversation you're having.
Gotcha.
So that would be my guess. Yeah, if I were to look at it that way.
All right, thank you guys for tuning into the Jazz Notes podcast. Like we said, we have preseason coming up and then regular season at the end of the month. We'll do a little bit more preview stuff leading up to that. Make sure to follow Ben at Ben's Hoops, follow me at Holt Sports, and check everything else out on KSLSports.com.
We might change this to Monday at some point.
Yes.
In fact, we might change it as soon as next Monday, but we need to talk about it.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry to put this on the air. At the worst, it will be out by Tuesday, but there's a chance it's out by Monday. Keep an eye on that. How long did we go today?
40 minutes.
Okay. So I hope fans are excited. I'm honestly really excited. I'm excited the NBA's back. I'm excited for Friday's game, and I think they play again Monday. So we'll have a lot to talk about regardless of the next time you hear this podcast. Follow us at Ben's Hoops, at Holt Sports, and read us at KSLSports.com. We'll be back next week.